Today on the podcast, we have our very own runner coach and Adidas-sponsored Olympic marathon runner, Steph Davis. Steph competed at the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games and has a mind-boggling marathon PB of 2:27. I'm so excited to get into the conversation.
So welcome to the Runna Podcast, Steph. To kick things off, we would love to know, what is it that got you into running in the first place?
So I started running when I was at school. But back then I was doing like a variety of sports, so just things for fun. But I moved to a new school and was kind of thrown into the deep end with a cross-country race. And I really didn't want to be last. So I worked really, really hard to kind of finish in a good position. Killed myself doing it, but really enjoyed it. And from there, I then asked my dad if I could go down to kind of a local running club, try it out a bit more. So I started going down to Victoria Park in Glasgow and did kind of their weekly track session at the time. So it was really fun, but I just did like one run session a week alongside like hockey, played that for my school, did some more running in the summer with the school, but on the track, so very different to what I do now. So yeah, it was just a bit mixed and just for fun. And then as I kind of got older, went to university, kind of had to make the decision between, or I didn't have to make the decision, I wanted to focus on one sport. And I chose then to join the uni running club rather than the hockey club. So that's kind of where I was then more exposed to like different types of training, I would say.
And so you started off by not wanting to come last. Did you come last?
No, I didn't. I actually came second. So either I had a hidden talent back then or everyone else was just terrible.
Wow. And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I actually loved it after. I found it quite nerve-wracking and stressful during it, and really hard, obviously, because running is hard. But I mean, I obviously enjoyed it enough to kind of want to do more of it. Yeah.
And so you then run through university at the running club?
Yeah, so Edinburgh University actually had two running clubs. They had kind of like the athletic side of things, which was on the track, and then they had the road runners. So I did that along with some cross-country running. So it was fun. It was social, great way to make friends at university.
And you're not a pro at this point?
No, definitely not a pro at this point. I'm still like just going to running club when I fancy it. I was pretty good at going like twice a week. They had like Tuesday kind of speed session, Thursday longer reps. Most of the time I'd go probably quite hungover from like uni nights out, and then just doing the races for like fun. But I was also still going to the gym lots, doing like circuit classes, spin classes, that kind of thing, because I just loved being active. So I probably back then was only running kind of like 30 kilometers a week.
And was the motivation to be fast? Was the motivation to be happy, to be healthy, a bit of everything? Like, what was it that got you doing those runs a week?
A bit of everything, I would say. I wanted to kind of make friends at uni that were kind of out with people that I knew already from Glasgow, where I'm from. So it was a really nice way to kind of have another group of friends that was kind of my group of friends. But I am competitive naturally, like that's the kind of person I am. So I was definitely always trying hard, but I just had fun with it. There was no pressure. I wasn't like worrying about PBs or hitting certain splits and sessions. Like I would literally just run. I mean, part of me wishes I could still be like that now.
So at what point did it all switch in your head and you were like, I'm going to take this seriously, I can make a job of this? Like, at what point did you, stop wanting to come not last and wanting to become first?
So I'd say it was actually quite a while after that. So I graduated from university, then moved down to London, and I ended up doing, you've heard of it probably, the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. It's like a big finance race, quite big in London. One of my colleagues that I was working with at the time kind of persuaded me to go down to that. But that wasn't when like I kind of wanted to go into professional running. That kind of more came when I ended up deciding to enter the Berlin Marathon ballot with a group of friends who just kind of persuaded me to. And even at that point, like I wasn't thinking pro running, I was thinking like one marathon and done. But I wanted to do one good marathon and really experience the proper training of it. So it just so happened that a coach kind of approached me and said, I'll help you if you want, because I was at this point a member of Clapham Chasers because I was training hard for these JP Morgan races. So I was taking that seriously. But only in the summer. And then the winter I would like hibernate. So so I took him up on this opportunity because I didn't know what I was doing with marathon training. I wanted someone who had a bit of expertise, and I absolutely loved it. So when I did Berlin and I finished in 2:41, so like was super happy with
your
that.
first marathon?
Yeah, I was super happy with that. And then that then gave me a championship time for London. So then it just felt like a good one to do given I was living in London. I didn't want to pass the opportunity. So I'd say after London is where kind of things started.
And so how old were you when you did Berlin?
God, let me do the maths. So I would have been 26.
Okay. And so then was London the following season?
Yeah, so Berlin was the autumn of 2018 and London was the spring of 2019.
Okay. And so then how did London go?
So then I ran 2:32 at London. Wow. So I was actually training just to run kind of sub 2:40. So I really surprised myself on that one.
That's a really, really good accident. Whoops, I went too fast. Wow. And so you've now done 2:32 at London.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Well, then after that, kind of the natural progression then seems to feel like I want to go sub 2:30. And it just so happened at that point that the Olympic qualifying time was 2:29:30. Yeah. So the two kind of times kind of went hand in hand. I wasn't putting pressure on myself to necessarily make the Olympic team because I still felt like just a competitive club.
And for context, at the time, you're working 3 days a week?
Full time.
Full time?
Yeah. So I'm working full time at finance. Trained for Valencia, which was then December 2019, so same year as London. And that's probably when I was then first exposed to like things like injuries and niggles and kind of the ups and downs of running, because before that had been pretty seamless. And I was really nervous going into Valencia because I just didn't know what kind of shape I was in. So I decided though that sub 2:30 was still the goal, so I went with the 2:29:30 pacer for that race, and he didn't pace it very well, basically.
You went too fast or too slow?
Too fast.
Ah.
And I knew, obviously, you know all along, your watch is beeping at you, you know what pace you should be targeting, you know what pace you're going at. But I was in a group, so just decided to kind of commit and go with it. We got halfway and like loads of girls in the group were like cursing the pacer, which I guess I could have done too, but we went with it. We knew we were going too fast from 5K in. So then I just managed to stick with it, and I think in my second half I was like about a 1 second slower, so I was actually pretty consistent in my splits. And then that's when I ran a time of 2:27. So not only had I got the Olympic qualifying time, but I definitely kind of was ahead of any expectations of that I'd put on myself.
And so this is really quite a short amount of time to do your first marathon, 2:42, to now get to 2:27.
Yeah, it was just over a year.
And does that almost mean that you felt like you had less pressure because you got so good so fast that you didn't have time for almost your whole life to become a professional runner and then build that pressure on?
Yeah, at that point I didn't see any of it as like any pressure. I was just doing it for myself. Like I wasn't going to Valencia thinking I need to run sub 2:29:30 because I need to make this Olympic team. Like I was working full time. Like I had a job. Running was just something I did for fun. Now, obviously, when I ran that time and I was kind of nearly 2 minutes below the standard, that's when things in my mind did start to change, because you're like, oh, wow, like I actually am like kind of in the mix. Like I definitely wasn't the fastest. There was 3 other girls on paper who were quicker than me, but there was a good chance I could make it, because you never know what happens in the marathon. Like,
and how are you balancing 5 days a week in the office or remote? I don't know. And
no, so this was pre-COVID, so this was all in the office.
How are you balancing that with training to be able to run a 2:27 marathon?
A lot of sacrifices in other parts of life, which I think at the time a lot of my friends are probably like, why are you being so antisocial? But they're like super supportive and totally get it now. But it was a lot of saying no to things, early mornings. Yeah, my life was
early mornings, but you're Steph Davis who loves to sleep.
Yeah, now that's kind of changed since I've got more time. But yeah,
you're telling me off all the time for my morning cycles.
I know.
So how kind of like what would a normal day look like?
So back then, depending on what day it was, but if it was like a Tuesday track day, I would usually get up in the morning, do a short run, go to work for the day, I'd cycle into work. Then after work, go straight down to Battersea Park, do a track session, come back. So most days it was kind of 2 sessions a day, kind of shortish one in the morning. For me, Tuesday was the only day back then that I kind of double runned. Everything else then I just did cross training or running. And then I'd have kind of one rest day, probably like every 10 days. Weekends, I'd reserved for my long run day because I had more time. But yeah, I did manage to fit it in. I don't actually remember it being, like, definitely there were days where it was quite a lot, but most of the time it was fine. But it did, after I ran the 2:27, then I really wanted to go and see what I could do at the Olympic trials, which are going to be the following spring. I then asked my work at the time if I could move down to 3 days a week.
And they let you?
Yeah, they were really, really supportive.
So now you're training in 2020 for the Olympic trials in the spring.
Yeah.
You're working 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And how do they go?
They were cancelled because of COVID. So the whole year was then kind of, everything kind of changed for everyone, obviously. But we were preparing for it, and it was only less than a month, I think, notice that we had for cancelling. Obviously, that was out of everyone's control because of COVID. But we basically went into lockdown, and it just wasn't possible to have it. It was meant to be at the London Marathon. So we were then just kind of waiting to see what happened. And I'd ran my last race before lockdown was the big half. And I'd ran the qualifying time for the World Half Marathon Champs. So I was still kind of holding on. Like, obviously everyone at the time didn't maybe realise how bad COVID was going to be and how long it was going to last. But I was holding out that I'd maybe be selected to run the World Half Champs, which are meant to be later in the year. And they did go ahead and I was selected. But then I had to pull out of that because of injury. And that's when my injury struggles started.
And then when did the Olympic trials get rescheduled?
So they got rescheduled for the following March, and it was a standalone event in Kew Gardens.
I used to say at Kew, I remember that happening.
Yeah, it was so fun because, well, I had so much time to train because of lockdown. I was only working 3 days a week. You couldn't go anywhere or do anything or see anyone. So it was, I guess, perfect for me that COVID happened at that time because it did give me just time to focus on my running and no other distractions. And it was then really cool to run at Kew when there'd been no races for nearly a year. The hype was just amazing. Everyone was so invested in it. It was on BBC. Like, it was a really cool event. Probably my favourite marathon, despite it being like 12 laps.
and you won?
And I won, yeah.
And what
so
time
that
did
was
you do
obviously
there?
fun. So I ran 2:27 again. I was about 30 seconds quicker than I was in Valencia. But I think what I loved most about that race was I wasn't going for any sort of time. I had the time, the qualifying time. So all I needed to do was come top 2. And it didn't matter if I didn't run the time on that day.
So instead of chasing a time, you were just marking...
I was just racing.
You were just marking the next woman.
And the group went out at 2:28:30 pace. That's what the kind of majority decided they wanted to start at. And I just sat in it and had one of those days where I just felt amazing, and from halfway pushed on, and I think won by nearly 2 minutes.
Who came second?
Natasha Cochran.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and she just missed out on the standard, which was sad.
And for like normal folk, that sounds so funny that you're kind of all racing into each other, but you kind of made a pact on the start line to run aiming for a 2:28.5.
There was pacers.
Okay, and so you've all asked them to run.
They've been instructed. It's been organised by it was Tom Bedford that organised it. He, with the consent and agreement of the athletes, who'd come to this decision that there was going to be a 2:28:30 pacer, and there was a pacer, I think, for around about like 2:32 as well, I think. They wanted to make it more of an event, not just about the Olympic standards. So there was some other runners in there, some great runners. And I think a lot of people ran PBs on the day.
And how many of you were running with that pacer almost in the mix?
There must have been close to 10 of us at the start.
And at what point did you kind of leave everyone behind?
Around halfway. Okay. Yeah. And we basically got to take one person in with us, and that person was responsible for handing you your drinks. So I took in my coach, but my friend Nick Balker was pacing, I think, a 2:34 group. And he chose James, my husband, to come in and as his drink hander. So it was really fun then. Every time we came round, I would kind of see my coach, I would see James. James would obviously give me words of encouragement. Then Nick would come round behind, ask how I was doing. James would feed back to Nick. Nick would feed back to James what he thinks I should be doing. This is all happening like in the action, like in the moment. It was a really good buzz around it.
And that was the first time where you knew you'd secured a Olympic place.
Yeah, I'd to basically tick the boxes of what was required.
How did that feel? And how do they call you up and say you have been selected? And
so yeah, on the day, like I knew it was pretty certain given I'd done everything that was asked in the selection criteria, but you do then still want to have that official phone call, which I got a few days after. But it was just a really surreal moment because I didn't know how it was going to play out. A lot changed in the couple of weeks leading up to the race because there was 3 girls faster than me on paper, and none of them ended up making the trials due to injury. So part of it was down to a bit of luck there as well, but that's marathon running for you. Like you just, and that's why I always encourage people to go for it, because you just never know what's going to happen to other people that could then give you the opportunity.
And you mentioned James cheering you on in Kew Gardens. How is having, so for context, I mean, I know Steph and James well. James is an incredible athlete himself. How have you find having him as your teammate along this kind of journey has helped, having someone supporting you, pushing you in your sessions out the door, and almost understanding someone being as crazy as probably all of us are in your corner?
A huge help, because I think if you didn't get it and I was always having to like justify why I was going out for runs, it would be a lot harder. But I'm quite like a stressy person sometimes, and he's very chilled. So he balances me out really, really well. And during COVID, obviously he had nothing in his race diary to train for, so he could help me with all my sessions, which was a huge help.
And to think he can keep up with Steph is demonstrates just how an amazing a runner he is. So okay, we've now qualified for the Olympics. How long is it from the day you find out you've qualified until you turn up to the start line of the Olympics?
So the race was in March and then the Olympics was in August. So not a huge amount of time, but enough time. And then it was all kind of, the focus was on like, how are we preparing for the heat and the humidity, because the conditions were not great. And because I'd qualified, I then basically got like an exemption pass to be able to travel. And luckily James could come with me. So we went away to Mallorca to train for a month. But unfortunately, I spent most of that injured. So I was able to, luckily I'd taken my bike and I was able to do loads of cycling outside in the kind of middle of the day where it was really hot. But out of kind of like the 5 weeks I was there, I only ran for 10 days. So it was quite stressful. There was definite moments of like, I'm not doing this. And then I'd be like, this is ridiculous. Of course I'm doing it. It's the Olympics.
And I guess cycling has been such a common theme, cycling and cross training in kind of all of your running journey.
Yeah.
How have you used cycling, and talk us about that?
So I'd say like it became more and more part of my journey as time went on, because when I first started, I just did what my coach told me to, and that was kind of a more high mileage approach. And I think because my body was fairly fresh, let's say, because I hadn't done lots of running, I absorbed it fine, but that started to catch up with me and I could feel like niggles and stuff creeping in, and that's when we started to introduce things like cross training. And first of all, I usually did it on the elliptical trainer just because that kind of mimicked more like running, and I didn't have access to a turbo and stuff then. But then when I got a turbo in my own house, it then just became a lot more convenient to do cycling. And then during COVID, cycling was like the only option because I didn't have an elliptical trainer. So that's when I kind of switched over to doing a lot more cycling as part of my cross training. And I really like it. I just find it, it really helps me cardiovascularly, building the strength in my legs. I also quite like the variety of the training. Like if I was just running all the time, I don't think it would give me, I think I resent probably some runs or see them more as a chore. Whereas the mix of training is just a bit more fun, especially on the bike. Like when it's summer, you can go out with people and it's more sociable. So
you don't need to convince me, being a
big
lover of my
shocks
cycling.
me when I've had friends that are injured and they do just cross train and they literally can come back just as fit, if not fitter. Like it is mental.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we don't all do it a bit more.
Yeah, it like saved me in my build to the Olympics because I genuinely think my overall fitness hadn't suffered too much. I did struggle more in the last like 8K of the marathon then compared to other marathons that I've done, just because I hadn't had the volume of long runs in that I needed. But I honestly don't think that I needed big weekly mileage. The cycling, it's more the conditioning that you need in your legs.
Presumably also then the heat and the humidity is also going to mean that's one of the reasons maybe you fade at the end of a hot marathon, right?
Exactly. Like, who knows? And another thing I find quite hard with it is because I've been done so much of my training on the bike, I kind of didn't really have an idea of what kind of shape I was in. And then you throw in the heat and humidity and you're like, I have no idea what pace to start at. Like this. So I just kind of said, oh, I'd really like to run sub 240. So I'll start off at that pace and see how it goes.
And how did the Olympics go?
Good. Like, it went well, all considering. And I wouldn't change the way I executed the race. I kind of was saying to my mum in the week building up to it, I was like, this is kind of roughly my plan. I'm going to start off slow. And she kind of pointed out to me, okay, that's a good plan. That sounds good to me. But you're going to have to probably be prepared that like you will be at the back. If you're doing that and you're being really sensible, like typically most people kind of go off quite quickly in a race, especially something like the Olympics. Especially when you start earlier and it's cooler as well and you aren't familiar with the conditions. So that was actually really helpful from her because then it allowed me to visualize everyone running away from me at the start before I'd got myself into that situation. And I did just that. I let them all go. And I think when I went through the 5K tracker, because my family were all home like tracking the tracker religiously, and I was honestly about like second last. But I just like moved through the field. Every 5K it was coming up in the tracker and I was just moving through. People were dropping because of the heat. And I ended up finishing 38th out of like 90 runners. So in the top half just. But I was really happy with that, given my build. I wasn't expecting to go out and compete and get a medal. I just wanted to do as best as I could, and I did that, and I finished in a not.
That's pretty amazing.
It's
pretty amazing for someone doing like, doing maybe one day that's like, the goal.
Yeah, speaking to like an inspiration though, like a role model. Like, of course, I want to do everything you've done. At that point, were you with Adidas yet? Or was that after the...
So I signed with them literally when I was in Japan just before. So my agent was in conversations with them for quite a while, basically since the trials. But it wasn't until like the week before the race that I actually signed the contract. So yeah, that's when that all started. And then, officially, I guess I was a professional runner.
And were the Olympics like everyone imagines? Obviously, you did it in the COVID year, but like, how did it feel? Like, what was the surrounding days like, and what was the kind of race atmosphere like?
Yeah, I guess I have nothing to compare it to because I've not been to Olympics before. I definitely think COVID definitely changed things. We weren't really allowed to go out and explore. We flew out 2 weeks before our event to adjust to the time difference, etc. But we were basically confined to a hotel. So you couldn't just leave the hotel and do what you fancied. You could only go out for your runs at certain times with a chaperone. In fact, we were driven somewhere to go for a run. It was really, really strict. So that definitely tainted things. I didn't have like this fun experience where you feel like you're getting to know a new place. But in saying that, the timing of my event, I guess, was pretty good in the sense that we finished the second to last day, I think it was. And you had to fly out, you had to leave the country within 40 hours of your event. So we then got the opportunity to go to the closing ceremony, which was amazing. So I did experience some atmosphere, I guess, but I imagine in non-COVID times it would be a lot more exciting.
And I guess your life has changed a lot since running the Olympics.
Yeah.
And at some point, Runna comes into that.
Yeah.
How did your life change coming home?
So came home, I was still working at Lazard in London. We then made the decision, James and I, to move out of London. And at that point, I decided to leave my job in London. And I was doing, at the start, during COVID, I'd started doing some one-on-one coaching with people to kind of help them during lockdown. With gyms and stuff closed, it was pretty hard for people to have the motivation to train. So I was kind of doing that as like a little bit of a side hustle and really enjoying it. So when I left London, I then decided to kind of focus on that full time. But I also had Runna simultaneously going on as well.
Yeah, so for context, Anya obviously followed Steph's journey, saw doing all of these amazing runs happening. I think Runna, we must have launched, so we launched in March 21, so that's similar time.
Yeah, so I met you round about the October, November.
So a few months into...
And then started in January.
Yeah, so a few months into Runna having got started, we thought, how can we take this up a notch? And who would be a better place and knowledgeable expert in the industry, and at the same time being based in London. And given that you're working 3 days a week, we met in a coffee shop, managed to convince Steph that this crazy small project at the time was worth you spending a bit of time on. Yeah. And then January the 1st, 2022, you joined us for a few hours a week.
I did. So we started off just a couple of hours a week. So I had a full year in London working for Runna, but at that point we were still COVID kind of times. We didn't have the office here, but we did meet weekly at Megan's in Wandsworth to do work together.
I remember the first time we met in Megan's, and Dom, business partner, decided, I'm up for an easy run. I'll come along for an easy run with Steph. Obviously, Steph's easy runs are slightly different to like what normal people do as an easy run. I looked at it on Strava the other day. We did 10K at 4:22 pace, which was like above tempo pace for Dom. That I remember we did that, and I think we needed to like round up to get to 10K, and we ditched Dom at like 9.6 at Megan's because he could not didn't fancy the extra bit.
You and I were like going off and down. He was like, see ya.
And so that was, I guess, the first year of your work, kind of all on the coaching side, helping us make these coaching decisions, informing the automated engine that's setting everyone's plans today. After the first year, that then evolved, and we kind of like took a bit more of your time.
Yes.
And all the while, like, Runna's evolving around you. What's that kind of been like for you to observe Runna from day one and be kind of employee number 4 or 5? To now be a team of kind of 60 of us.
Well, it's just mad, but amazing to see the progression and like how quickly it's gone. And I think for my role as well, it's seeing how behind the scenes things have changed from the coaching side as well, and how we've made it more streamlined, how we've now got the app, because when I first joined, we didn't have the app. It was PDFs that people downloaded. So it's just been so cool to see how it's changed and how quickly it's changed, and also just be so exciting to be part of it, knowing what else is to come as well. So yeah, I love my job at Runna.
And I guess now it means that you're not working in finance.
Yeah, so because of Runna, I was able to kind of leave my job in finance. And it's funny because when I moved to London, my goal was never to work in finance long term. Like, I just kind of fell into it, and I studied sports science at university. So sport has always been like something I've been so into and interested in. And to see how my life has changed and how my career's changed, and to actually end up doing something that means a lot to me, kind of accidentally, I guess. Like, I didn't know I was going to get into coaching, but I just absolutely love it.
Feels like a fairy tale story, kind of looking back. And maybe kind of like with all of that in mind, like what would you say is your like greatest running achievement?
Well, qualifying for the Olympics is definitely, it was just like I wouldn't even say a dream come true, because it's not something that I dreamt of as a young age, because I just didn't see it as like a possibility. But I think what I've learned from running and even getting into coaching is like opportunities happen, and just to sometimes just go for it. And it sometimes feels like a risk. Like, I had this secure job in finance 3 days a week, to then move to Leeds and kind of be working remotely, doing the coaching. It just, you just have to take these opportunities, especially if it just feels like the right thing. You spend a lot of time in your life working. You want it to be doing something you really enjoy.
Yeah.
And one kind of staple that's been a part of your running journey all this time, or supporting you, has been your turtle mascot. Is that right? Do you want to tell us about your turtle?
He's not real. He is to me. He's called Freddy, and he does come everywhere.
And
You've met him a few times, haven't you? Well, some people might call him that.
I haven't met Freddy.
Did you not meet in America?
If I did, I don't remember.
Oh, well, he was there.
And what is?
He's just a turtle that comes a lot of places. Just good luck charm.
So, but he's not alive.
Technically, no.
So, is he a teddy bear, or is he like?
He is soft, yes.
I'm just as confused as you. So he's not a teddy bear and he's not alive, but he is soft.
I think I'd call him a teddy bear.
So
I think you guys would call him a teddy bear. Yeah, but obviously I would never offend him like that.
And he came to the Olympics.
Yeah, he came to the Olympics. Yeah, my roommate Jess Basicki got to meet him. Yeah.
Nice.
And he's
No
just,
shame here.
and he's just one of the small things that like have helped you get through
Just comfort.
everything.
Yeah. All down to Freddy.
Could you, if you could only take one to the start line of your next international marathon, are you taking Freddy the Turtle or James, your husband?
I'd have to take James. He would take Tom Trumps.
You could. And would you be then very worried that you don't have your turtle with you?
There would be some level of stress, yeah. The worst time was when I left him in a hotel room. And luckily I realised I could feel this, like, something is missing. There was like a hole in my heart. This was in Valencia when we went to the 10K, and I was like, James, I've left Freddy upstairs. So we got to like run back in and get him, and all was fine. He was there safe.
Gosh. Do you have any mascots? Any good luck charms?
No, not really. Like all my jewelry that I keep on me.
And you'll run in all your jewellery?
Yeah, like this necklace is my marathon PB on the back. This bracelet says "Run fearlessly" on it.
But that's surely
Little
extra,
things
that's
like
like the 1% that's weighing you down.
Well, I actually wanted to ask Steph about like her mindset and like those 1%, and just selfishly for myself ahead of like London Marathon. When it does get tough, what do you think about other than Freddy?
I think it's just trying to stay relaxed and like in the moment. I always just am like taking 1 kilometer at a time. For me, I've always broken down any races as to when I'm going to have like my next gel. I know it's not that exciting, but I find if I look at like the big picture, sometimes I've got like 20k left or 15k left, it can feel quite daunting. But if you're just trying to focus on the now, and if for races like London Marathon, Valencia Marathon, like the atmosphere is so good. So I think it's just tapping into that as well and like using the energy around you. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I find helps my performance is being more relaxed going into it. So it's doing what you can in the week of the race to kind of focus on what you can control. So like just be super organized, have your race plan like to a T in your head. Like don't leave anything unturned. So when you're starting on that start line, you're not even thinking about what you're doing. It's just like automatic. And that just helps kind of like calm my nerves, because then I'm focusing on like a process that I'm trying to carry out rather than like getting too stressed about splits and times, and you're just ticking them off.
Amazing. Right, well, we are going to move forwards from our more sensible conversation, getting to know Steph and your journey, to a slightly sillier a few fun questions. But before we do, we're going to cut to future Steph, who's going to tell us our coaching tip of the week.
My tip today is to ensure you have a mix of both high intensity training in your running plan. This is the best way to see improvements. Interval training involves running for shorter amounts of time at a faster intensity, and this will be balanced out with lots of easy running, which is great for your recovery and help improving your endurance. If you're new to interval training, try this session. It's 4 to 6 reps of 400 meters with a 90-second rest, and this should be done at 5k pace or slightly quicker. And remember to warm up and cool down too.
Well, thank you very much, future Steph. We're back with our very silly questions. So to start with, do you want to go for the first one, Anya?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. You can answer this as well if you like. Would you rather run a marathon in high heels or an ultra marathon barefoot? And let's say it's 100-kilometer ultra barefoot.
Oh, surely high heels are the same as some of the new carbon shoes, yeah?
I know. Not too dissimilar. I think I'm going to say the ultra and barefoot.
You're doing an ultra? I'm learning so much about Steph that once she got up early, I just for context, if we've ever tried to get Steph on a meeting in the last 2.5 years before 9:30, it's immediately no, to the point where on a Monday, a meeting that we no longer have anymore, we used to have a morning check-in at 9:15. On a Monday, we had to push it back because Steph refused. So she's already confessed to early mornings. And then the other one thing I thought would never change about Steph was she should...
That's so important for recovery.
The other one thing was that you'd never, ever run an ultramarathon. And here you are, you'd rather an ultramarathon than
I just think the sound of heels is so painful. I presume we're talking like big high heels. We're not just talking like a wee wedge.
And are we in barefoot shoes or are we barefoot?
No, you're barefoot. You're barefoot.
You definitely choose that.
Well, I've done an ultramarathon in barefoot, but 50k,
Have you?
not in barefoot sandals. I've done
very
50k in basically fancy flip-flops.
You must have done
You
the flip-flops.
choose to do that.
But like actual flip-flops.
I did choose to do it. I'm not like a robot following what my programmers told me.
Because I find barefoot shoes fascinating because you thought that was a good idea.
Did you like them?
Well, I did a lot of barefoot running, particularly when I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching. It would be an opportunity for me to make my feet and calves. It wasn't because it was a trend at the time. It was because I thought it was a great way to make my calves, my feet strong. And I would often do that with some of my slower clients. And anyway, I was pacing one of my clients to do a half marathon PB at 9:30. Not PB, sorry, half marathon at 9:30, and they were running easy. And I was also joining someone for one of their legs of their David Goggins 4 miles every 4 hours. So at like 5 a.m. I'm running 4 miles. I then run with them for a bit, run all the way to the start line this half marathon, pace this person.
So this was an ultra that
a homemade ultra. I ran 50k barefoot.
But this one is going to be like traily and stuff.
I'm going to go with, I mean, I'm not versed in high heels, as you're obviously surprised to hear. I think a marathon in high heels seems less bad than 100k barefoot.
They both sound horrific. Your calves and high heels would be absolutely
Does it not mean that you're...
On a night out, I've definitely done like 40k steps, like in high heels though.
Right, so you're barefoot, Steph. 100k barefoot, Steph. If we get 3 likes on this podcast, Steph will then do the challenge. Nice. Right, shall I go for the next one? Would you rather run a marathon with a swarm of bees chasing you from start to finish, or in a torrential downpour?
Torrential downpour. I don't even think that is
Wouldn't
anything to think about.
Wouldn't you just run a bit faster to get away from the bees?
No, I'd be running in circles or something. I'd be terrified.
What about you?
I quite like running in the rain.
I thought you were about to say I like running away from bees.
No, on my Duke of Edinburgh, I got stung by like so many bees, and it really has haunted me. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, right. I'm going to go for the next one because did the marathon the weekend, and one of the things they were handing out at the aid stations was crackers.
Okay.
This is such a bad idea.
So the Paris Marathon had crackers, it had gingerbread men, and fruit.
It's
like,
so dry.
No gels, like real food.
You think they'd even do like gummy sweets rather than dry crackers?
They had lots of water stations, so I kind of got my water from them and I carried my gels with me. Anyway, you're on the start line of a marathon.
Yeah. Start
line of your Olympics, and you're at the Olympics in 5 years' time. Steph, you're at the Olympics. You're both on the start line together, and you can only have crackers or pickles. What are you having?
And that's your fuel throughout the whole race.
That's your marathon fuel. And you also have to fuel. You're not allowed to just...
Crackers.
Crackers has to be.
Crackers.
And it's a really hot marathon through Dubai.
You just have that bit on the end.
Well, I know.
I think I just need carbs.
Crackers, yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to take them in like really small. Pickles, I think I'd chunder.
I like pickles.
I do too, but like not when I'm running.
Well, I you don't know. Have you ever had a pickle when you're running?
No.
Let's see. It might be the thing you need.
I'm thinking like salted crackers, and it'll be like replace my sodium. Yeah, carbs.
Okay, right. Well, unanimous. Do you want to go for the last one, Anya?
Yes. Okay. When you're running your next marathon, you can only listen to one song on repeat the entire time. Is it Eye of the Tiger or The Final Countdown?
Eye of the Tiger. Yeah. I'd only want The Final Countdown like right at the end.
It would be a bit odd,
and they're doing the final countdown. I'd be like, liar.
And then also by the time you hear the final countdown at the end, it then probably loses its oomph, doesn't it?
Yeah, Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah. You know, and you see signs at the beginning being like, only 26 miles to go.
Yeah.
You're like, great.
Well, it is the final countdown. You've done all your training.
That's true. Yeah, it is the last bit of the puzzle.
Anyway, hopefully we don't have to do a marathon eating pickles in high heels, listening to the final countdown over and over again. We are going to share one of our funny, embarrassing stories that one of our runners have sent in. If you'd like to share your embarrassing story for next time, then please send it in to podcast@runna.com or send us a voice note on Instagram. And Steph, forewarning, we're going to ask you your most embarrassing story as well. So you can think about that while we're sharing this one. Do you want to read this one out, Anya?
I can do. We'll keep it anonymous. Okay. I'm out for a run with my daughter in beautiful, albeit rainy, Richmond Park. Now, let me tell you, this park is like a muddy obstacle course on a good day, and with the rain adding an extra layer of fun, it was shaping up to be quite the adventure. As we're cruising along, we come across 3 massive puddles that my daughter's legs just couldn't conquer on her own. Being the supportive parent I am, I decided to lend her a helping hand. But what a mistake that turned out to be. Now, just as she's about to take the leap, I reach out to assist her, and I completely misjudge my own footing. Next thing you know, we're both nosediving into the heart of this ginormous puddle, with a solid 2 kilometres still to slog through to get back home. Let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the feeling of being soaked head to toe in muddy water, laughing hysterically while trying to salvage what's left of our dignity.
Have you ever face planted on a run before?
I've fallen over in Clapham Common, and it was like right outside an ex-boyfriend's house, and it was just when my Instagram profile was starting, and I ripped my favourite leggings. I just remember being like, I really hope no one's seen this. I really hope.
Was he an ex-boyfriend at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I used to like run past his house purposefully.
Let's hope he's not listening. And if you know Anya's ex-boyfriend, send this podcast to all of them. Did you ever bump into him on these runs?
No, but I have since.
And is that what got you into the start of your running? Just to
something like
make
that.
your ex-boyfriend jealous?
Something like that.
I have also face planted in Clapham Common doing the park run. It was during the start of the park run. I don't know if you've done the Clapham Common park run. Yeah. And it's really like twisty and turny as you take a left at the start. And there was a dad and a buggy going the other way. I dove out the way, fell over in the mud, and then got up and somehow made it my fastest K of the race, and came third. What about you, Steph? Let's hear your embarrassing.
So mine's definitely embarrassing, not with like a funny tone at the end, well maybe for other people. So I've never face planted on a run, but I did Oxford Half in 2019 and really, really wanted to run sub 73 was my goal.
This is when you know someone's a pro, because they use that minutes, not hours and minutes. So that's 1:13 for like normal humans.
The conditions were like horrendous, so it made it hard to get the time I wanted. But I crossed the finish line in absolute floods and floods of tears because I was so disappointed with my time. But I had won the race by quite some time and got a good pot of prize money. But I didn't care about any of that. I was so upset about my time.
And what time did you do?
I did like 73 mids.
So you were 30 seconds late.
I was about 40 seconds after.
That is does it make you think about crying again? Just really.
It makes me think, like, honestly, the amount of tears was next level.
It's so
all
dramatic.
Afternoon, so dramatic.
That's really embarrassing.
It's really embarrassing. Yeah.
Well,
Like, so ungrateful.
What?
Yeah.
Well,
so it has taught me to like just chill out a bit and like it's not all
pretend
that
they were
time.
happy tears.
Yeah, unfortunately.
How did the post-race interview go?
It was brief. It was
It was pretty-
yeah. I was like having a tantrum.
The same question we like to leave all of our guests with at the end of every podcast, and we don't like to warn you, so you can't prepare your answer. But you're on the start line of your next marathon. You're completely naked, and you can bring 3 things. What are you bringing?
3 things: sports bra, pants, and my running shoes.
Any gels? You're not putting it on Strava? How are you pacing?
No, I'm just not going to not be naked.
Is that what you would have worn for the marathon at the Olympics, I guess? That and a watch?
You
That
saw
and a
much
watch.
more. Socks,
Yeah,
maybe.
Socks.
That's quite a pro answer.
Yeah.
Well, you've missed a trick.
I'll be underfueled, but we'll cross that bridge.
You
You hope there's someone.
You wouldn't go for a swimsuit, and then that way you've got a spare item.
Yeah, maybe like one of those onesie things,
Yeah.
trainers and a gel.
A gel.
Yeah, I'd take a gel over
Just
my
one
watch.
gel.
Well, I can only take 3 things.
Would you not take like a big gel,
Yeah, the biggest gel I can find.
like a water bottle of gels?
Yeah. Yeah, water bottle. I did empty lots of gels into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks
Okay.
for
This is now
tips,
getting
Ben.
like quite a pro outfit. You
Then
couldn't
you
get
got to
like.
carry it. You got to carry that big water bottle filled with all your gel.
Would you rather that or no gels?
Probably rather carry it.
And what trainers, just being nosy, what are your marathon trainers at the moment?
I'd ask Pro 3s. Yeah.
Nice. Well, there we are. Tune in to see Steph running a marathon in swimsuit with a big bottle of gels and her Adidas Pro 3s. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Steph. And
thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It was amazing.